Thank you. Thank you so much. And hello. Welcome to everyone on behalf of the Environmental Justice Program and the National Wildlife Federation. We want to say thank you for joining us this evening for our Clean Economy Coalition of Color special session. The CECC is an alliance of some of the nation's most insightful Black, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian, and Pacific Islander leaders and advocates of color who are committed to amplifying ideas, recommendations, and solutions that uplift the priorities and economic interests of historically marginalized communities in order that we guide the clean economy policies and its implementation. Today, we seek to plant seeds of change and have a conversation about challenging opportunities, those challenges and those opportunities for communities as it pertains to the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act and the Build Back Better framework as a whole. You all are the experts. We are relying on you to hear from you, the good, the bad, the ugly. You're on the front line. We want to hear what you have to say. And we will be led by our leader here at the National Wildlife Federation, our visionary, the one and only Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali.
All right. Thank you, Simone, and welcome everyone to Feeding the Soul and Feeding the Body, two things that are incredibly important. And we are just amazingly blessed tonight. So before we begin our special session, I have the pleasure and honor of introducing a special guest speaker to provide welcoming remarks, U.S. Representative James Clyburn. When he came to Congress in 1993 to represent South Carolina's 6th Congressional District, Congressman Clyburn was elected co-president of his freshman class and quickly rose through the leadership ranks. He was subsequently elected chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, vice chair, and later chair of the House Democratic Caucus. Congressman Clyburn is also a passionate supporter of historic preservation and restoration programs. His efforts have restored scores of historic buildings and sites on the campuses of historically Black colleges and universities, and his legislation created the South Carolina National Heritage Corridor and the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor, elevated the Congaree National Monument to a national park, and established the Reconstruction era National Monument in South Carolina's Low Country. I hope everybody's been down to the Low Country. He's currently, Congressman Clyburn is the chairman of the Democratic Faith Working Group and a fierce advocate for rural and economic development and marginalized communities. And I had the distinct pleasure of also presenting him with an Environmental Justice Award in Spartanburg, South Carolina, a number of years ago. And I'm also blessed that I have family from South Carolina, both on the screen and those who are there right now. So with that being said, I want to pass the mic to a champion for so many different issues, Congressman James Clyburn.
Well, thank you very, very much. And it's good to see you again, Doctor. I have not seen you in a while, but it's good to see that you're still on the front lines. I'm pleased to be here with your organization and always pleased to be with organizations working in collaboration with faith leaders. As was just mentioned, I chair the House Democrats Faith Working Group. And as you can imagine, I've been spending a lot of time on Zooms, pretty much the full day today, with a lot of faith groups who are particularly interested in a little announcement regarding the Supreme Court that was made today. But our interest here this evening has to do with hopefully not just Build Back Better, but the things that preceded it. The American Rescue Act and what it has done and still doing for the American people, and the infrastructure bill. I think that most of what I'm going to mention to you this evening will have to do with the infrastructure bill. Now, if you look at that infrastructure bill, which is kind of interesting to me, I've been listening and watching people running all over the country. In fact, the one that really got my eye was a couple of days ago, a member of Congress in her state talked about this big, I think it was $800 million expenditure that's going to be a change agent. It's going to change the state and emphasize the fact that the bill was a bipartisan infrastructure bill. What she did not say was she did not vote for the bill. In fact, voted against it. And I think that one of the things we've got to do almost immediately, is to share with communities what's in that bill so that people will get a good feel for what they can expect and help guide them to where they need to go to get that help. For instance, over 10,000 American households and 400,000 schools and child care centers are lacking in safe drinking water. And as you just heard, when I first met Dr. Ali, it was about environmental justice issues dealing with things like clean air and safe drinking water. Now, there's $55 billion in this legislation to deliver clean water and to get rid of lead service pipes. That's a big deal, not just in Flint, Michigan, where everybody has had their attention lately, but all over this country. Lead pipes are still ruining the health of our children. And we all know that this climate is changing. No matter what anybody may say to you, they can believe in the science or not. I can tell you, these weather conditions that we're having are predictable, and it's going to get worse. And what we've got to do is change our habits and help communities change their habits. In 2020, the United States faced 22 extreme weather and climate-related disaster events. Disaster events with losses exceeding $1 billion each. That's huge. And people of color are more likely to be living in the areas that would be adversely impacted by these incidents than others. And in this infrastructure bill, my big push in the infrastructure bill, as many of you know, was to get broadband. Broadband. Everybody was talking about, you may recall, now a lot of people won't admit it now, they said, well, we're going to pass this infrastructure bill, but we are going to fund traditional infrastructure programs. I stepped up and yelled to high heavens that infrastructure, railroads were not traditional infrastructure bills until Abraham Lincoln came up with Intercontinental Railroad. Interstate highways were not traditional infrastructure issues until Dwight Eisenhower came along with the interstate highway system. And broadband has never been infrastructure because we didn't have the internet for it to be traditional. But it is needed, and it is infrastructure. And I fought hard, got a big group together, and we became infrastructure advocates. In fact, it got to the point where every time I walk in the room, people look at me and call me Jim Broadband. $65 billion in this infrastructure bill for broadband. Now, that's only about 2/3 of what's needed to build out the country 100%. So we're going to have to be strong advocates to make sure that that $65 billion is spent equitably. Now, notice, I know you used the word equally, equitably. that goes beyond equal, because a lot of communities, they already got broadband, and they'll go in and spend the money to go up from 3 Gs to 5 Gs. We got a lot of communities that got 0 broadband. So when you start talking about spending equally, and you spend $1 billion in the 0 broadband and $1 billion in the 3 broadband, that $1 billion get them to 4, and the 0 get the other community to the 1. No, we want equity in the expenditures of this money, and we are going to be fighting for it. And I want you all to know that in the Build Back Better bill, there's more to build upon. Now, here's the thing. We are not going to get Build Back Better. But what we are going to get, as Joe Biden called it, we're going to get chunks of it. You might call it pieces of it, but I'm going to use Bill Biden's word. We're going to get chunks of it. We're going to get a chunk of Build Back Better to deal with the child tax credit. And Joe Manchin says he's for it if we means test it. I don't have a problem with that. Let's means test it. We're going to get a chunk of Build Back Better to deal with the coverage gap in these 12 states, South Carolina being one of them, that did not expand Medicaid. We got thousands of children. In fact, down in Texas, they tell me 700,000 not covered because Texas did not expand the Medicaid. We have got agreement that we're going to fix that in the bill coming forward. Whatever comes out, I won't get into detail here, but I got it from the horse's mouth that this is going to get fixed in those 12 states. We won't expand Medicaid because we can't make the states expand it. But what we're doing in this bill is making people who are eligible for Medicaid expansion, making them eligible for a new category of the Affordable Care Act to cover those who would ordinarily be eligible for Medicaid expansion. Now, I know that y'all got a lot to talk about. You don't want me wasting up all the time because I'm only supposed to be making welcoming remarks. But let me say one thing, because I'm particularly proud of one thing that y'all have been talking about. There is $200 million for Rural Energy Savings Program. That's for businesses and residents in rural areas to allow electric co-ops to help people, you may call it weatherizing your homes. What you're saying is that if you live, say, in a mobile home, and you need to put in a new HVAC system, we can do it in such a way that the monies will be there for you to get that done and pay for it in your monthly bill. $200 million for that. And last but not least, next week, there's going to be my 10, 20, 30 that I've been pushing now for almost 20 years. 10, 20, 30. That is at least 10% of the money that's being appropriated in this section must go in communities where 20% or more of the population been stuck beneath the poverty level for the last 30 years. Bipartisan bill in the House, sponsored by yours truly, and I've got Harold Rogers from Kentucky, Republican. The two of us running in the House. Over in the Senate, Bob Portman from Ohio, and Senator Coons from Delaware, pushing that bill in the Senate. We plan to pass this bill to make 10, 20, 30 applicable to the entire budget of the United States. So I want you all to know, and I said I was going to go with that thing, but then I'm going to go. My dad was a fundamentalist minister, and he thought he was training me for the ministry, and we talked about my going into the ministry. But when I got to South Carolina State, I got there during the sit-ins. And when I was getting out of jail for about the third or fourth time, I decided I better change directions. That going to the seminary was not the best thing for me. And I went home to tell my dad that I had changed my mind and I was not going to go to the seminary. He said to me on that occasion, well, son, he said, I suspect the world would much rather see a sermon than to hear one. And so I've tried to make my work in the Congress be a good, productive sermon. And so I want to thank you all for the work you're doing with the faith community to get these things done, because I learned early, I think it's in the book of Matthew, that it's their deeds, not their words, that really demonstrate your commitment to living your faith. So thank you all so much for allowing me to be a part of this effort, and whatever I can do to help you fulfill your aspirations, your needs, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Clyburn. We appreciate you. We appreciate your commitment. We appreciate you continuing to stand in there and fight for vulnerable communities all across our country. We will definitely make sure that we stay in touch, and we will do what we can to be supportive. With that being said, Representative just shared with you about his family. I was raised on one side of mine in Baptist and Pentecostal ministers, and my grandfather was a coal miner and a small farmer. So I was excited about this session that we're having today, because it is directly connected in the framing of my life. And we're blessed that we're able to bring so many spiritual leaders together, along with those who help to feed our country. And not only to make sure that we are honoring you, but also that we have the opportunity to share information to help you to be able to, sort of tap into some of these resources that are out there. And then also to hear from you about those areas where you would like for, whether it's legislation or policy, to be strong, or do what we can to be authentic collaborative partners to work with you to help to make that become a reality as well. We have a shifting agenda tonight. And we have a couple of folks who are going to be moving around just a little bit. So we ask that everybody give us grace as we navigate this process to make sure that everyone is heard. So as we go through this process, we're going to have a number of different speakers. We're going to share 4 or 5 minutes about who they are, their organization, and also what they see as opportunities, what they see as questions, what they have as concerns in relationship to our topic tonight. And I want to bring forward first our good friend, State Representative DeKeither Stamps, the Mississippi District 66. He's a state representative there. And then I'm going to swing back to Tatiana Eves, who's actually going to go through and break down some of the pieces that are in there. And then we're going to get right back into our agenda as a number of various panelists that we have. So with that being said, let me turn it over to you, State Rep Stamps. I'll pass the mic to you.
Well, thanks again for the opportunity to come before you and participate. And I thank you always for just the healthy conversation y'all provide and the resources and education y'all provide all over the world. So just thank you so much. And thank you, Representative Clyburn, for always being a champion for justice, a champion for equity, and for our communities to move forward. Again, my name is DeKeither Stamps. I'm a state representative here in Mississippi. And for my little 2 minutes, I want to focus in on how to land this ship, because they did their job at the federal level. But in order for us in states like Mississippi, where you have blue communities and red states, in order for these monies and resources and opportunities to become reality, there must be unity at the local level. Well, let me give you an example of what I mean when I say that. The biggest threat we have is the division of our coalitions. And right now in Mississippi, we're going to get roughly $1.8 billion. And we have a little over 40 members in our Black caucus here that make up our coalition. And the biggest threat we have here locally, and it's the same thing when I talk to representatives in Virginia and Alabama, if each one of our members settle for $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 million on the side, we break ourselves apart, we break our coalitions. But if we bond together, the 40 of us could get $800 million, which means that'll be $20 million per district. So unity can bring us $20 million apiece, and division and side deals can get one or two legislators a few resources and none for other folks, or limited resources for other folks. So across the country right now, in order for us to land this ship and bring resources and a degree of equity to our communities, we must maintain our local coalitions, maintain the unity amongst those who support us and the folks that are at the table dividing these resources up. So I just encourage everyone to do everything you can to maintain the unity amongst your coalition partners at the state level and at the local level, so that we can make sure that we make steps forward versus finance groups and entities that didn't even support this at the federal level to make their communities better over ours. So I just want to make that one comment. I'm here to learn tonight, so I look forward to a healthy discussion, but I just want to make sure that one comment is that the unity amongst our state leaders and our local leaders is going to be critical into getting the resources so that we have the opportunity to rethink infrastructure, to rethink how we do it, and not just create more concrete jungles, but to bring in natural infrastructure, to bring in green infrastructure, to bring in these other these practices that we know make our communities more successful, safe, and vibrant. So thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Thank you, Representative Clyburn, and all of the National Wildlife Federation team for the opportunity.
Now, we thank you, State Rep Stamps, for everything that you continue to do and to make sure that we are focused on revitalizing our communities, those that need revitalizing, and for some that just need to be built up because they never had the resources to begin with. So we appreciate everything you're doing there in Mississippi and your leadership, for others across the country. With that being said, we know that, some folks who are going to be presenting tonight and who are engaging with us have a deep expertise in a number of the resources that are flowing. There are others who may be still navigating and trying to figure out a few things. So we are blessed that we have Tatiana Eves, who's with us, who is just amazing when it comes to policy and understanding the dynamics that are going on both on Capitol Hill and state houses, sometimes in county commissions. I don't want to put too much pressure on you, sister, but also the needs that exist inside of our community. So I want to real quickly pass the mic to Tatiana, who's going to break down some of these various pieces that folks may not be as well versed on. So we're going to make sure that the entire family, by the time we get done, that we increase and elevate that knowledge level for those who may be in need of that. So Tatiana, let me pass the mic to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Tatiana Eves. I'm the Environmental and Climate Justice Policy Specialist here on the EJ team here at NWF, and I am honored to be here with you all today. I just want to go over a few resources we put together for this conversation. You should have received them in emails leading up to this event, and they will also be put in the chat as I go through them. So the first document is the draft infrastructure bill allocation breakdown. This is a deep dive into the provisions within the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that can aid EJ communities specifically. I broke it down into various categories and subcategories so that it's usable as a quick guide to what funds are becoming available and for what types of projects. This document is part of a larger publication that we will be putting out as a team later on. The infrastructure bill that was just passed presents a unique opportunity for faith leaders and farmers to ensure resources reach the community level and address these longstanding environmental injustices, as everyone has put very eloquently before me. Some of examples of the allocations provided within this bill are in the water infrastructure investments, such as $125 billion for projects to increase resiliency or adaptability of water systems to natural hazards, and $15 billion for lead service line replacement projects. There are also $3.5 billion for projects that increase energy efficiency, health and safety, and reduce energy costs for low-income households specifically, and $110 billion allocated for roads, bridges, and other major infrastructure projects, just to name a few. The next document that we provided is the funding and resource opportunities for faith leaders and farmers. So we compiled this to provide you all with the multitude of resources that are out there to support you all in your work. This document gives a brief high-level overview of the infrastructure bill that the previous document does a deep dive into, and various resources and funding opportunities for faith leaders and farmers specifically, whether they're from government or private or non-sector funds. They cover issues such as financial and technical assistance for historically underserved farmers, funding for socially disadvantaged farmers to purchase farmland, funding to increase the sustainability of farms, and also funding to enhance food production. For faith leaders, resources consist of funding to implement green infrastructure projects and improve surface transportation, funding to develop childcare centers, community centers, food banks, community gardens, etc., and grants for the needs of children, youth, and families in the community generally. And we've also included a special section at the end of this document to highlight specific resources and funding opportunities that promote the synergy between faith and farms, such as this really great program, which is the Come to the Table mini grant, and it's from the Rural Advancement Foundation International, and it pairs faith communities with local farmers of color to purchase farm fresh foods for distribution to food insecure members of the community. Many of these resources listed you may already be aware of, but we wanted to make sure to just lay out what we've identified and ask you all tonight what's missing. What are areas of funding or resources that you'd like to see available that are currently lacking? And lastly, we've sent a few links with resources just around civic engagement and what you can and can't do in the civic and democracy space as a nonprofit organization, and guidelines around being active politically. We also highlighted an organization that works specifically to provide tools, trainings, resources, and legal guidance to nonprofits around these issues. And that is all from me. So thank you all, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Tatiana. And I'd just like to remind folks, make sure that you're checking out what's going on in the chat. There's huge amounts of information that's there. Of course, we will also be getting you additional information. And we also just want to encourage you. So we have had a number of roundtables at national town halls, and folks have provided and shared so graciously just amazing sets of information that we have been able to put into these pieces of hopefully very digestible information, and at the same time also sharing them with folks both there on Capitol Hill, in state houses and county commissions, and our partners have also been sharing them across the country as well. So we really, really encourage you to ask questions, to also share additional information, tools, and resources for your organizations. And we'll make sure that we capture all that and get that back to everyone so we continue to build family and community as we move forward. With that being said, we're going to now begin to hear from a number of different participants. And I just want to remind folks real quickly, you know, a few of the things that we're hoping that folks will be able to do is share what's currently going on inside of your communities. What are those challenges and opportunities as Tatiana and others have raised that we want to make sure that's a part of it. And then we'll also ask folks to make sure if you are one of the panelists, if you're not currently speaking, to make sure that you put your phones on mute so that we can honor the information and individuals who have been so wonderful to spend some time with us this evening. So with that being said, I'm about to take y'all down to Florence, South Carolina, a place that I know well, to a good friend and a champion for communities as well, Reverend Leo Woodbury. I'll let him share with you as I pass the mic who he is, sets of work that's going on, and then also his comments on the topic tonight. Reverend Woodbury, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, Dr. Ali, and to all Congressman Clyburn, who who works continuously to help us find justice in South Carolina. And we're just so glad and absolutely ecstatic to share with you. I'm not going to belabor things with the problems. We all are aware of the problems and challenges that we have. Clean drinking water, not just in Flint, Michigan, but in places like Denmark, South Carolina, Timminsville, South Carolina. Right now we're getting reports from people in Latta, South Carolina, who have problems with their drinking water every time there's a hurricane. People who have wells have to worry about pesticides, herbicides, diffusions from septic systems getting into their drinking water, etc. But I want to share some of the exciting things that are going on in South Carolina, starting with food. And so we've known about minority health disparities and the role that food plays in that. And one of our panelists tonight, Warren Dixon, I had the privilege of serving as his pastor for 7 years at St. Peter AME Church, intergenerational farmers, and looking at things like how they use biblical practices so that when they harvest the food, they glean and they leave the crops behind. They don't go back a second and third time, but allow people in the community who are poor to come and pick up sweet potatoes and things like that from their farms. And so looking at the problems, we decided that, food swamps, food deserts that's a false narrative. They only exist because we're waiting for some corporation to come in and provide the fresh food that we need for our communities so that we can lower pre-existing conditions. And so I'm so glad to see things in the infrastructure bill, things like having a mobile produce vehicles, a way to get fresh produce to communities. And we know that works because during the pandemic, when our food supply system was cracked all across America, churches, nonprofits, community centers, etc., went out into parking lots and went out to community centers from their churches, gave out food. And we were able to do that and continue to do that with partnerships like with the PD, Indian tribe, and farmers like Warren Dixon and Harold Ellaby and other Black farmers who have been helping us to feed the community. So when we look at the water problems that we currently have a demonstration project where we use hydro panels, or the real term is air-to-water generators that are off-grid. They're solar powered. The fans draw air in. A thermal unit heats up and condenses the water in the air and then pumps it into a dispersal unit. And with the 4 panels we have at our church, Kingdom Living Temple, sorry about that, our pastor, and with our nonprofit, New Alpha Community Development Corporation, where I serve as executive director, we're able to produce 224 16-ounce bottles of water a week. And we're going to amplify and expand that in the next couple of months. The need for broadband is really strong. So in communities where we've been working for 2 years, like the Britain's Neck community, which is 282 years old, and with the large African-American population, we had to go in with Wi-Fi hotspots. They have one at the Safford Community Center, but with our work, Congressman Tom Rice with Ori Telephone Company is now installing broadband throughout that community. We also have some greenhouses that we've introduced into the community to work along with the community garden that they have. And we will be introducing in the next few months some electric bikes and other vehicles where we're trying to bring electrical vehicles to, marginalized and underserved communities. And we're bringing all of these things together on 7.5 acres of land in Britain's Neck, South Carolina, where in about 6 weeks we'll begin constructing an environmental justice training and sustainability center. It'll also have the hydro panels there. It'll have a garden. It'll have a fruit orchard. And most important, working with the PD Indian tribe in Marlborough County, South Carolina, we'll be using indigenous ways of growing food and producing things so that we hope to help to have a just transition in a community that's been flooded 3 times in the past 6 years and having up to 2,000 people being evacuated. So doing that work, we have 5 working groups that are working on policy, reducing logging in an area that is in the floodplain, also developing outdoor recreation, small-scale agricultural businesses, and then mitigating farming. And I have to give a shout out to the National Wildlife Federation, who working with us and the South Carolina Wildlife Federation and other organizations, the Concerned Citizens of Britain's Neck, Soul Chapel AME Church, Bethel AME Church, Red Hill Baptist Church, White Hill Baptist Church, and others, that on February 5th, we will be launching a project to bring green infrastructure to this community, and we'll be planting 900 trees in our first phase, and not just 900 trees, but with the help of the people in the community. And this is why I believe strongly in community-led solution, because communities know the problems and they know the solution. So we were able to identify the areas where the flooding starts, and also to identify areas where the flooding is the worst, and have property owners who will be working with us to plant these 900 trees. Now, in terms of farmers and the faith community, my faith tradition says strongly in Genesis, the 1st chapter, the 29th verse, that we've been given seeds for every good food, for fruits, for vegetables, and it's up to us to use them. As I believe my Creator said, everything that was created for us is good, and we need to return to those things that make us healthy. The second thing I like to lift up in the faith context is found in the 1st chapter of the book of James. And in there we read these words, that we are to care for the poor. We're to care for the widows, or in my case, I say single mothers, the orphans of those who may not have parents there, and we need to care for them and the poor. And the third thing is from the book of Ecclesiastes, once again, the 1st chapter, that says there's nothing new under the sun, and things that once were will be again. And that means that we have to go back to the days when we weren't worrying about having a supermarket, every few blocks, but we had those brothers and sisters, those farmers who rolled through communities, and we bought fresh produce off the back of trucks. And so I'm just really excited. I can go on and on and on in terms of energy. We need to really work on developing businesses in our communities where we're doing the energy efficiency and where we are installing solar panels, et cetera. One of the problems we had, I'll lift this up and then I'll be quiet, is out of the 6 solar installer trainings that we've had, we found in South Carolina that many of the people from our communities who were being hired, that they were being hired by temp agencies, so they were getting paid less money than the regular employees, that their work was temporary. And as in the case of Orangeburg County, when they were finished constructing 2 solar farms, the company just picked up, left, and said, if you guys and women really want to continue working, then here's the temp agency that you can get in touch with while we're going to Michigan, South Carolina. So we have to realize, and I say this often, The cavalry is not coming. The cavalry is us, community-led solutions that are implemented by community people is a very large part of the answer to the problems that we're facing during the climate crisis. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you, Reverend Woodbury. We'll let the church say amen. All right. So now we're going to move on to Miss Eloris D. Speight from Alcorn State University. I'm passing the mic to you.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to join you. And I am Eloris Speight, Executive Director of the Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers Policy Research Center located at Alcorn State University. Now, because that is such a mouthful, we usually refer to it as the Policy Center. And just briefly, a little bit about myself. Now, I actually retired from USDA. I spent over 20 some years in Washington, DC, but I also have a family farm, in North Carolina, or my family has a farm in North Carolina. And I spent my summers putting in tobacco, if you will, when I was growing up. So I have an ag background as well as a policy background, if you will. So the Policy Center then was authorized in the 2014 Farm Bill. And it specified, the Farm Bill specified that it was to be located at an 1890 university. So Alcorn State University responded to the request for proposals issued by USDA and was the successful grantee. And although it is located at Alcorn State University, it is a national center with a strategic focus in the 18 states with 1890 land-grant universities. It is staffed by 4 full-time employees, plus university staff. But the majority of the work at the Policy Center gets done through contracts and subawards. And the Policy Center was created to be a voice for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, if you will, and to ensure that when we went to Congress or to the House Ag Committee, that we had data-driven information there, that it was not just anecdotal stories, but we had the research and the data to back up the issues and challenges that we brought before them. Now, the Policy Center is housed within the Office of the President, at Alcorn State University. And our mission then is to conduct research, analyze policy, and make recommendations seeking to achieve equitable. And like Representative Clyburn said, I emphasize equitable because, again, equal does nothing for us. If you start up here and I start down here and you give us equal services, you have not done, any justice. So we do recommendations seeking to achieve equitable and economic integration of USDA programs and policies for socially disadvantaged farmers, ranchers, communities, and rural landowners. The ultimate vision of the Policy Center is to be the premier authority for information on the history, current conditions, trends, and future projections of socially disadvantaged farmers, ranchers, and communities. Now, I think, and I'm sure in this group, everyone knows kind of what the definition of socially disadvantaged, but I want to underscore because in certain policies, it refers to the difference between minority farmers, if you will, and socially disadvantaged. The original definition was white females. White females were not included because there is nothing socially disadvantaged about a white female. And the reason why I highlight that, because in certain subsequent legislation, the definition does include white females. And so what we found at our research at the Policy Center was when you include, everybody. So when we looked at, and we had Jackson State University analyze from 2014 to 2017 to see had services improved for socially disadvantaged farmers. So when you looked at the overall total, the answer was absolutely yes. When you took each one of those categories and broke them down then into Black farmers, white females, Hispanic, Latino farmers, if you will, Asian Americans, what we found is the one group where overall services had increased to was white females. No surprise, the group that received the least amount of services was Black farmers. So we have started at the Policy Center, when we present information, we break it down in the individual categories. We don't use, one large pocket, bucket, if you will. And so we have 4 primary areas of focus: active research, policy development, strategic outreach, and stakeholder engagement. Now, stakeholder engagement, to show how broad the representation is at the Policy Center. So we have an advisory board that is chaired by the president of Alcorn State University, and is currently Dr. Felicia Nave, the 20th president of Alcorn and the first female president. And then we have 25 members. So there are 4 other 1890 universities that are represented. We have 3 1862 universities, the 2 1890 executive directors. We have 5 farmers at large then, to make sure that we have farmers of all sizes then. We have 5 community-based organizations, 2 agribusinesses. So most recently, John Deere and Corteva Agriscience, and then 3 other agricultural leaders, which most names I'm sure you'll recognize. Lloyd Wright, who retired from USDA, sits on our board. We have Mike Espy, former Secretary of Agriculture, and then we have a representative from Tougaloo College there. In addition, we work with over 70 plus community-based organizations that represent socially disadvantaged farmers. So we're currently working with all 19 of the 1890 universities and a good number of other land grant, institutions there. And we also have what we call is a technical working group, and consisting of 1890 university staff, community-based organization, and USDA staff. So, because what we want to make sure is that when we take our recommendations to Congress, they are technically accurate, so that there's no one that can punch holes in them because they are not accurate. And then we take our recommendations and we present them to the Congressional Black Caucus there, and to get their support so that they, in fact, move them forward to the House Agricultural Committee. And one of the things, that I want to say, so one of our strongest supporter has been certainly Representative Clyburn, but Congressman Thompson, who was instrumental, and Congresswoman Fudge, who were instrumental in getting the Policy Center in the 2014 Farm Bill. Now, we also, and so I'm sharing more information about our process so you understand the resources that are available. So we continue to expand the partnerships at the Policy Center. So we have partnered now with the Extension Risk Management Education Centers, the 1890 Universities Foundation, the Southern Rural Development Center at Mississippi State University, law centers, including Harvard Law School, Vermont Law School, Southern University Law Center, and the University of Arkansas. Most recently, we're working with the Mississippi Center for Justice, and specifically related to heirs properties there. Recently, we're contacted by Walmart, who has just established recently a Center for Racial Equity. And one of the things that they, said is that they want to figure out the quickest way to get resources to Black farmers. So that's one of the things we're working with them to come up with initiatives that will, in a short amount of time, get the resources to Black farmers. We continue to work with Jackson State University on policy analysis. Tougaloo College, we just recently worked with them to roll out a leadership development program for elected officials, so in the rural towns. And we started in Mississippi, in the Delta. We work with several USDA, agencies. And now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to say a whole lot other than that our priority areas, we have 6 priority areas there. And so we focus on analyzing the agricultural policy and the impact of that policy on socially disadvantaged farmers. We look at those things that either support participation by socially disadvantaged farmers in USDA programs, or those things that hinder participation. Access to, and we started out with technology. We have expanded that to include resources. And often when I'm talking to socially disadvantaged and they identify then what are the resources that are needed or the challenges, access to credit comes up as either number 1 or number 2.
Yes, ma'am. You are giving us so much amazing information, but we've got to move forward here just a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so please drop your contact and information in the chat, and then folks can also pose questions to you there. Thank you so much. All right, we're now going to move to Ms. Georgéa A. Cole, and I am now passing the mic to you. And I'll remind you, we're going to try and stay to 4 to 5 minutes. I did not mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you all so much for having us here tonight, and thank you for all the guests that have been on here. I will try not to be long, and keep it in the vein of the anointed Reverend Woodbury. I just would like to start by accentuating the positive. As he stated, there are so many problems that we could all bring up and that we all are familiar with, but I want to first give honor to God for what he has been doing, and then going on to say with all of the houses of worship and the houses of faith that are here represented, and being just a small number of those within the communities that are out there and being boots on the ground, I like to say I thank God for that. Reverend Roz is on here today, and I just thank God for all the great work that she's doing amongst all of our wonderful cohorts here. I heard you say, Dr. Ali, I heard you speak about feeding and faith, and that just struck a chord inside of me about feeding and faith. And with our houses of worship and with our church particularly, I did not intentionally say who I am and all that I think I have done. I don't want to give my accolades. You can go to our webpage to see about me, but I just want to accent the what's going on here in the city of Detroit and the surrounding areas. We all know that we are developing, but we are developing around the marginalized areas. We are developing not within the marginalized areas. And I tried to stick with positivity, Reverend Woodbury, because we are trying to get where you are. There are a lot of urban farmers here. We do have 3 community gardens within our church. We thank God for the National Wildlife Society and the Rivers Rouge. Tatiana, Dr. Ali, thank you all so much for choosing us to be one of the 3 churches, houses of worship, that will be hosting a rain garden. And you all have granted us these scholarships, and we're looking forward to it. But there's so much more to be done. I heard Representative Stamp say it's only going to come through unity, and that's my favorite scripture, Psalms 133. Yes, when there is unity, it is good and it is pleasant when there is unity amongst the brethren, and there's the blessings and life, even life evermore. So our issues here are, we do need space, safe space. We need space that we can educate our people and not be ostracized as a faith communities for having faith and wanting to bring the education of sustainability and the environmental issues there. It's only going to be through this place of unity and the heartbeat of assimilating and getting this education out to our communities. There are over here, unfortunately, Reverend Woodbury's food sovereignty issues, and our children do have to walk a mile just to get to some hot Cheetos and never get fresh farming. And all of the fresh vegetables and fruits that are here within our communities, unfortunately, are not at hand and so readily as it is from the country. I'm a Southern girl, so I understand what that's like to be able to go to the market. Here, our Eastern market is great, but we do need more, and we need to have the houses of worship considered. So I would implore the Congress people to think about that when you're granting the funding and when the policies are written. Please don't forget us, and let it not be us that's on the end of the totem pole. I heard you say, and I'll wrap up with this. Representative Clyburn, you said that you chose to go into politics instead of preaching because you did a sit-in. You got tired of probably going to jail and getting beat over the head. Well, the sit-in started with the church. So don't forget where we started, because that is where we're going to need to end up, in the church, in the houses of worship, by praise, by prayer, by standing hand in hand in unity. And thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Keep fighting.
All right. Amen, amen, and amen. We're now going to move to Reverend Rosalind Bowler. I'm passing the mic to you.
Good evening, everyone. I need to say thank you to the National Wildlife Federation for allowing us to access your huge platform. Yes, this is amazing. Thank you as well to all of the distinguished panelists that I've heard and that I expect to hear. Thank you to Reverend Cole for sharing and lifting up Detroit so sadly but brilliantly. Amen. Yeah. We have to speak truth, right? I am the executive director of the Brightmoor Connection Food Pantry. Brightmoor has the distinction of being the third poorest community in the nation. Yes. And the 7.2 square miles that Reverend Cole just spoke about, that we constantly hear about, that we're reading about, this huge comeback story, as marvelous as it may be, is only 7.2 square miles. And there's 144 other square miles in the city of Detroit that has been left out intentionally and consistently, right? And we need to honor truth in this moment. I'm not going to open up with a positive scripture. I'm sorry. I don't want to let anybody down. As a New Testament biblical scholar and as a womanist interpreter, my job, my discipline is to lift the silenced, the muted, and the marginalized voices from the text and give them voice, right? To reclaim their voices. Someone said to me once, maybe they never had voices. No, we always had voices. We've been silenced, muted, and we've been disrupted in what our narrative was. And so this is this opportunity to challenge narratives and disrupt oppressive situations, right? That's what I need to say this afternoon, this evening. Brightmoor Connection is a client choice model food pantry. Folks come inside and they shop. They get to shop off the shelves. It affords dignity, humanity, self-determination, and agency. Is what you lose by the time you end up in the food pantry. Amen. Nobody plans for that. That's not on anybody's trajectory. No one says, when I get older, some point in my life, I'm going to be in the food pantry. That's not anything that's expected nor planned or plotted out. And yet, for some reason, we seem to believe that folks in food pantries need God. Let me put this pivot. Let me put this little pinpoint here. I know for a fact, people may not know livable wages. Most surely do not know safe, affordable housing. Water security, housing security, food security is not something they may know, but guarantee I can tell you people know God very well that are in food pantries. I need to make sure we understand that so we be clear on our audience that we're speaking about, most especially in the city of Detroit. The Brightmoor Connection Pantry, what we do is we are fighting for equitable, right? This equitable justice that we keep talking about, because we're already at the bottom and we're trying to crawl our way back up. And we're in a city where there was a pandemic raging long before COVID-19, which was hepatitis A, because Brightmoor Connection also sits in the highest, the community has the highest population of water shutoffs. Pre-COVID and still now. Water shutoffs are still going on. They never stop. I need people to understand that. The water shutoffs never stop. And we are also in a food desert. We have the pantry has partnered with local Black farmers to where we're able to purchase farm-to-table fresh produce. We are interestingly in the community that has the highest population of urban farms. So while I understand the need and desperately agree that we have to get fresh produce to our families, when you're in a community where there's no water, no fresh, affordable drinking water, when you're water insecure, as wonderful as it is to have fresh produce, it does no good if you cannot boil it. I need to say it this way. Black dirt, green grass, green flowers can get water. Little black babies can't. I'm just going to put that. That's going to be my scripture right here in this moment. That's what we're going to worship and pray about. That's what we're going to lift up that voice unto God for, because that's what's happening in the city of Detroit. So while you're reading about the city of Detroit and you're hearing about this wonderful comeback, I need you to understand everybody ain't coming back. That brings me to my next point in within the Brightmoor community and the city of Detroit as a whole. We need to talk about right to counsel. Right? That's something I'm not seeing in this, nowhere ever in this bill. We need to talk about right to counsel, because right to counsel affords those who are most marginalized the ability to have a counsel representation of equitable, right? Right? A standing. That's what we want to talk about, right? To say you can't just put somebody out their homes because they couldn't afford their rent, because once again, the AMI that's being used in the city of Detroit is not from the city of Detroit residents, but on the outer skirts of the city of Detroit, right? So we need to understand that. So when we talk about housing insecurity and food insecurity and water insecurity, what we're talking about is everyday life for folks in the city of Detroit, in this Brightmoor community, but not just in the Brightmoor community, in Detroit as a whole. Lead pipes, we know that that's going to be wonderful, that hopefully that we get some trickle down money. That did not happen before, when the COVID relief money came into the city of Detroit. That money went everywhere else. So I'm asking to see what kind of accountability we're going to have around that. Most assuredly, we need to understand and talk about this need for access to food security. Though nowhere in it, the food bill, the farm bill, was not included in this. SNAP money, SNAP dollars are not there. I know what's there. I want to talk about what's not there. That's what I want to do. I want to disrupt the narrative today. Please forgive me if this is not what we came to talk about, but I need to disrupt the narrative today about everything that's there and talk about what's not there, so that we can possibly make a decision today, right? Get our minds focused, unified today, as the good state rep said, so that we'll be on one accord with understanding that before we start celebrating all that's been done, and as wonderful as it is, because we definitely need broadband, we need all of this, but we need to also make sure people have homes for broadband to be in. We need to make sure right to counsel is something that is not just a right in one community, but not in all communities. I need to make sure that people understand that food insecurity is running rampant, as well we all know, and Black communities most especially, it's there. And the Black women in this community, which have been profiled, because when the water shutoffs hit, the highest population of water shutoffs, over 78%, it was Black women with small children. That was not by happen chance. That was not coincidental. That was not by, not done, not unintentionally, right? We know that word, unexpectedness. Something happened, bottom dropped out. That's not what happened. It was done intentionally to remove small Black children from their homes and put them in penal systems, right? Which is what we call foster care systems, which is pre-preparatory for that. But then we also need to understand that not only was the children removed from the home, but the houses were taken. So we're talking about loss of land grabbing, right? So we need to, I'm going to keep highlighting this right to counsel, because that's what my folks need in this community. We need water. We need safe, affordable drinking water, housing security, water security, food security. We need basic needs. The Brightmoor Connection Pantry has been able to, like I said, not only partner with local Black farmers. We've been teaching homesteading, because clearly we need to get back to some homesteading, right? That's just the reality. We need to learn how to make soap. We need to learn how to, do teas and tinctures. We need to learn about roots and everything. We need all of that. But again, I got to close out, because I don't want to use my 4 minutes and have you cut me off, but I want to make sure we understand. We most surely need to talk about what's not in the what's not in the infrastructure bill, what is not being said, and what definitely needs to happen in this community. I thank you for the opportunity to speak today and share.
All right, well, we thank you, and we believe in real talk here. So I should have said that at the beginning. So I ask for y'all to forgive me for not making sure that I framed this properly. And we also believe in the words of James Baldwin when he said, if I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things that you don't see. So thank each and everyone for raising that up for us. We're now
Thank you, Dr. Ali.
Yes, ma'am. We're now going to move over to Reverend Dallas Conyers. I'm passing the mic to you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. I love the information. Thank you, Reverend Boer. That was amazing. I work for the Southeast Climate and Energy Network as the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Manager, JEDI Manager, and I also handle all things faith there. And I am blessed in my role because they might not know it, but I would do what I do for free, but I'm glad they pay me because I grew up not with a lot of money, right? I grew up in a place that was actually built on top of a garbage dump. I'm one of those kids that I got sick every year like clockwork. And my mom, she believed in cooking fresh. She did not cook out of cans. She did not cook out of boxes. And everybody was very confused about why I got sick all the time. Fast forward 20 some odd years later, I'm starting to learn about environmental justice and climate change. And I figured out why I was getting sick. And that's how I got into farming. I figured out that I need to be in control of my own food supply. And I needed, and since I still couldn't afford organic fruits and vegetables, I needed to be able to grow them. And that's what I started doing. So I call myself a mini micro farmer. And the farmers on the call here knows that means I just farm a very small bit of land. I am not in any way a corporate farmer, but I understand certain things about the life of a farmer that many people who don't live that life don't understand. And one of the things I understand is that it is exhausting. When we talk about access, when we talk about people going out and advocating for themselves and advocating for their family members, that takes time and energy. I sit down at my desk all day and I am exhausted by 2 or 3 o'clock just from being on Zoom. But when it gets to farming season, when it hits March through May, and I have to choose between Zoom and my daylight hours, and then I'm working in the night because I'm using the light and the lantern and everything else to get my seeds in and watch my starts and make sure no weeds are coming up because I do organic farming. You know, it's a lot. It's a lot to expect of one body, and it really is a lot to expect of a community. And so when you ask about why people who are in rural locations and people who farm and even do subsistence farming are not more present at these meetings, and not applying for these grants and not doing this simple internet research to find resources, we don't have time. You get up, you plan your stuff, and I'm talking about you get up before day breaks. You plan out what you want to plant. You look at your diagrams and your charts, and you see what needs to come in and what needs to be added into your land, and then you go out there and you do the work, and you work and you work and you work some more, and then you try to handle other parts of life like paying bills and talking to people and washing your clothes, and then somebody wants you to come in and get on a meeting. That's not happening. Even if you do get on a meeting, you're not processing, you're tired. You're lucky if you remember to eat. So, and then harvest season is worse than planting season. So it's unrealistic to talk to the farming community and tell them you have to. The farming community needs to be hearing, I can do this for you, and I can do that for you. And this is what's going to appear in your inbox. Just open it, and we've already pre-prepared most of the remarks that you need to put into these slots. And all you have to do is sign it sometimes, or this is a call that you can listen to and ask questions later. And we're going to host a call, and you can put the phone in your pocket. Do you know how many meetings I've had in my field with my phone in my pocket, and then I just send in answers and questions later on? That's what works for farmers. Or instead of saying you have to come to the county council meeting or the city council meeting yourself, can we use the technology we already have and say, can you send us a video of your comment? And we will post that video and let them play it there so that your voice can be heard. But we know that you're not going to show up. It's just not possible for you right now. because we love to do things when the sun comes out, but so do farmers. So we get all ramped up in March and April and May and June, but they working, right? And I have to choose, and I choose advocacy, but I miss my land. And it hurts my heart every year that I can't do this as much as I used to, but I'm called to this work. And also what I wanted to bring up is mental health. You asked us what is not being shown in those resources. And, you know, God says, I don't give you the spirit of fear. I give you the spirit of love, power, and a sound mind. And I want to understand, you know, I want us to, as the church and as his people, to understand that God really cares about people being able to be in their right mind. He cares that we can think clearly. He cares that we can function day to day and handle those small things that at the end of the day, for some people, when they are sick, when they are broke, when they are homeless, those small things break their back. It breaks their mental state. But it is a sound mind more than anything else that gets people through. And it is a sound relationship with God that builds that sound mind, because he's the one who gives us peace beyond all understanding. But what I did not see in that resource list is access to mental health resources. We live in a country where if you are a farmer or a rancher, you are 2 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population, just for being a farmer and a rancher. We also live in a country where the second leading cause of death in youth populations for people aged 10 to 24 years old, second leading cause of death is suicide. And the highest growing rate of suicide attempts and suicide successes is in a Black girl. 71% is the increase in suicide rates in the Black community over the past 10 years. We cannot ignore mental health. We cannot keep telling people just pray about it. God says, if you want to see my, well, somebody, I'm sorry, not God said, but it says in the Bible, if you want to see my faith, look at my work. And mental health care is work. And I know personally as a religious leader, how hard it is to get people in the Black community to talk about this. I hosted myself 2 different years, Black mental health conferences in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I broke it up. I had it as a 1-day conference. I had it as a multi-week conference, and people don't want to talk about it. They all wanted to call me on the side and ask me questions like they should still be ashamed. So I tell you, when people are looking at farming, when people are looking at losing their lands because their crops aren't producing, because they don't understand that their coastal lines may not be flooded, but that salt water is coming into their fields and killing their crops. When people don't understand that their tributaries are drying up and their riparian borders need to be changed, and what they can grow is changing, and they need to do that research because their temperatures are changing so drastically that I can grow oranges if I wanted to. I'm not supposed to be able to grow oranges, right? All this change is creating people and created situations that are not peaceful for our farmers. And we have to look at the mental health of our people, because we can get this planet to survive, but if everybody's broken in their spirit, it will not matter to us. So we have at the Southeast Climate and Energy Network looked at doing a grief conference. I'm going to say it, we looking for funding to put on that grief conference on helping people to be able to deal with these things, because this is what we care about. We want to make sure that not only the earth survive, but the hearts of the people do, because God cares about how we live on this earth, not just the afterlife. And more people would turn to the light of God if we would let them know that God cares about their now, and we care too. Thank you.
All right, Reverend. I don't know if you saw the chat box, but that was some facts that you was dropping on folks, and folks were definitely resonating with what you were sharing. And I hope that we can not only hear the words, but also get down to the hard work of making sure that this becomes a reality, so people are protected, both their minds, their bodies, and their spirits. So we can do that in community. With that being said, I now want to move to my sister, Huda Alkaf. And I want to pass the mic to you. I think you're up in Wisconsin right now. So I'm passing it to you.
All right, thank you very much. And so I start with, in the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful. I greet you with the Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. In Wisconsin, I acknowledge that I'm on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homeland along the southwest shores of Michigami, North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnick rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's Sauvin and Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. Prophet Muhammad, God's peace and blessings be upon him, is reported to have said, if doomsday is about to take place, while any one of us has a tree sapling in our hand, which we can cultivate, then cultivate it, for we will be rewarded. He also mentioned that there is none amongst the Muslims who plants a tree or sows seeds, and then a bird or a person or an animal eats from it, but is regarded as a charitable gift for them. These messages and teachings of active hope and healing inspires me and motivates me to plant and tend to the garden of life. I'm Huda Alkaf. I'm an ecologist, environmental educator, and the founder and director of Wisconsin Green Muslims, My Tree Sapling, a grassroots environmental justice group formed in 2005, connecting faith, environmental justice, sustainability, and healing through education and service. We are based in Milwaukee, and we are a statewide group. For 17 years now, Wisconsin Green Muslims works on environmental justice issues as they relate to climate change, clean air and pure water, healthy food, solar energy and energy efficiency, waste reduction, and transportation equity. It is a duty and obligation on Muslims to care for Earth, our common home, and to care for each other. In Islam, there are clear teachings and signs about the important, beautiful, and intricate balance of creation. God repeatedly tells us to maintain that balance and not to upset the order in creation. Muslims are advised to be moderate in every aspect of life and to stand up for justice. Wisconsin is one of the top most segregated states, and Milwaukee is one of the top most segregated cities. Milwaukee has about 70,000 lead pipes. There is no safe levels of lead. Wisconsin is expected to receive $48 million for lead pipe abatement in 2022. In Milwaukee alone, Wisconsin's largest city, the cost to replace lead pipes on all public and private property is estimated to be $800 million. Also, there is a great need for local BIPOC workforce development, which is currently lacking. It is time to deliver on Justice 40 initiatives now. Climate and environmental justice cannot wait. Through Wisconsin Green Muslims interfaith initiatives, faith communities for equitable solar, and faithful rainwater harvesting, which connect with over 7,000 Wisconsinites from 18 different faith traditions and spiritualities and backgrounds, we center the healing power of sunlight and rainwater as sacred gifts and trust that gently touch the heart and open the mind with love, light, and power. We provide free solar education, trainings, and assessments for underserved communities and women of color, and advocate for energy democracy that is community-based, solutions-focused, frontline BIPOC-led, and women of color-led, and justice-centered renewable energy efforts. We, however, lack financial support to enable us to continue. We take our work seriously, and we say that it's time to light the way and heal the wound. The intensity of light is stronger in darkness. providing greater opportunity for light to lead the way. Let's continue to work together, countering darkness and spreading light and healing justice. We can build back better. Shine on. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. What a powerful message. Thank you so much for centering us. We are now going to move to Kalamona Kaho Ahalahala. And I've been practicing that all day, so if I messed up, I apologize.
So let me begin with a brief a chant of greeting. So, ina ke aloha no e na na hai ai na o na me te aloha ai ka olu o ni vai ka pa ai ai kamakani nani na nai te mahali e nani na nai te mahali e aloha e aloha e. So I want to begin by expressing my greetings and aloha to all of you and for the organizers of this gathering and to all of the panelists and the esteemed guests. So aloha kako, aloha to you all. Okay. So it's been quite interesting for me to sit here and to listen because it is the only way that I know how best I can be a participant and how best to make a contribution. And in listening to you, I've heard the infinite areas of need and support that have all been handed to people of color, especially in your communities, wherever you are. And so I come to you with a different perspective, and I want you to help to understand that perspective. So I think it would be worth me sharing a few things about a Hawaiian perspective and a Hawaiian kind of worldview. And I'm making no assumptions that any of you are experts in Hawaiian. So I think that by sharing a little bit is helpful. So first of all, you have to know that we as Native Hawaiians are Polynesians and we are seafarers. We're voyagers and we're explorers, and we have navigated and traversed the largest ocean on the planet Earth, the Pacific, and made discoveries of an immense area of ocean dotted with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or even millions of islands that we have made to become our home. And so we are island people. So we live on small islands in the middle of the largest ocean on Earth. And you have to know that this kind of connection was taking place and recorded as early as 1500 BC and to the present time. So we are ocean people. And then secondly, I want to share that we have what we call a cosmogonic genealogy chant of creation. And in the chant, it starts with darkness and light and the movement of darkness to light. And then it talks about Wakia, who is to us Sky Father. And then it describes Papa, which is Earth Mother. And the union of these two spirits are the beginning of creation for the place that we call Honua, or the earth. And in that creation, it says that the first creature to emerge from the depths of the sea is the uku ko'ako'a, or the coral polyp. And then all things follow in the creation of earth. And so mankind, us, we come very far toward the end of that creation. So as a Native Hawaiian and as a Polynesian, we see that we are a part of all of these systems systems and all of these environments and all of these creations, and that we are not separate, but we are included with that. And therefore, the responsibility we bear as a Native Hawaiian person is to be sure that we care for what we consider the kupuna, or we care for the elders. And therefore, if you go through the genealogy of creation, it says to me, the Hawaiian, that my eldest kupuna is the coral polyp. And then I take care of every other creature that follows until that of my own family. And so we bear that as a part of a worldview. So when it comes to talking about place, we have this view that we are connected to every part of place and that we're not separated into different ecosystems and categories or whatever. So we come with that kind of view. So I wanted to share that foundation with you so that you get a good sense about how we see things. And further, I said, if you look at the kinds of things that help us to come to this, I want to share that our traditional and customary practices are really tied to the inception of our family systems as they are articulated in the connection of the sky, the earth, the ocean, the land, all creatures, and mankind himself. And through meticulous thought processes and keen observations of our environments, the phases of the moon as a motivator to the earth, procreation as a necessity for survival, and the understanding of the cadence and the rhythm of the universe. This is the foundation for which the Kumulipo, or our creation chant, comes. And therefore, in us, the values that we share today openly to all, you might know the term aloha. I began with the word aloha, and it's a welcome, but much deeper than those greetings. Aloha is a spirit of a people. Aloha is the spirit of love and the spirit of care. And then if you look at a value that we adopt as a Native Hawaiian, we have aloha aina. So aloha, or the love for the land, the sea, and the sky, and all that is within it. And then we have other values and concepts of malama aina, which says malama, to be a person that cares, protects, and preserves the land, malama aina. And then another value which is important to us is aina momona. So the land, which is the sea, the sky, and the earth, momona, to be made fatten. If we take care of all of the things that we describe as a person of place that includes its care for all things, then we should be able to momona the aina, fatten the land, because by doing so, we're protecting it and providing all that is necessary for us to continue to provide for each other and for all things that help to provide for us. So, so these are the values I think I wanted to set forth in this conversation, and then express to you that we have political challenges that are challenging because they have not yet been addressed. And in the political challenge, I want to make sure that you understand that the Native Hawaiian people and the Native Hawaiian kingdom was overthrown by the United States military in an illegal act of war and has been acknowledged by the Congress. But while that has been acknowledged, there's been no reconciliation since 1893. And then when you look at the fact that we're moving forward in these political times that are trying to make changes and adjustments that are politically tied to policies, that you will see that these policies often deal with issues of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, because these policies now are formed without the inclusion of Native Hawaiians in their position justly as recognized Indigenous peoples of the Hawaiian Islands. So, so we proceed as though everything is okay. And so we try to do the best we can as Native Hawaiians within these current systems, but find them challenging because policies, laws don't necessarily express what is needed to be just. And so while I'm looking at all of the legislation that is being mentioned, that are federal legislations that are going to provide for all of these things, I will note that you will go back and look at where these legislations are provided for Native Hawaiians. And then let's talk about what needs to be done to help narrowing that gap and understanding. But I think it comes from helping others to understand who we are, that help now to make this kind of a process to be one that can be supported by not just an Indigenous group of Hawaiian people, but of a nation of people that have similar issues, and that we are needing to come together as one to help resolve them. So with that, I want to give you a little example. I belong to Kua'aina Uluawamo, which is a nonprofit in the state of Hawaii that is a membership organization of over 65 communities throughout the 8 Hawaiian Islands. And in this organization, we have decided that we would help each other using Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous practices to help restore our environments and to aina momona, to fatten the land. And in these processes, we have gone to, as an example, to the state of Hawaii and asked for support to help these communities that are knowledgeable in these traditional and customary practices that are going to be supported in the Momona Aina, in supporting the health, the resiliency, and the recovery of current systems. And then we find resistance because Native Hawaiians are not being given the opportunity to implement those practices. So we struggle in decades, going before state legislatures, going before land boards, to simply ask to give the Native Hawaiian an opportunity to express and implement their traditions, their rights, and their practices that are going to lead us to better positions in terms of where we are in climate change. And so how we interpret those federal laws are important, as was mentioned earlier about equity. I would like to make sure that equity is given consideration far across the ocean into the smallest group of islands in the largest ocean on Earth when it comes to our participation in the resiliency, in the restoration, and the protection against all of the changes that are before us in climate. And therefore, with that, I hope that this has been an opportunity that has helped to bridge us in making those connections. And then that I hope that you will all jump on a canoe and come and sail to Hawaii and then learn about what it is to be a Hawaiian from a Hawaiian worldview, and then understand that it is no different than being a person that cares for the world and the people of the world. And we have contributions to make, and we would like to share them, but we need your help. So thank you for this opportunity. And I hope that there will be more. And I look forward to perhaps meeting you sometime, whether there or here in Hawaii. So mahalo and aloha.
Baba, thank you so much for that, for that grounding and the information that most definitely I know for myself was educational, and we will continue to work together to make sure that justice and equity become a reality for all of our people across the planet. So thank you. I'll also remind folks as we about to transition to the next speaker, and I'll ask my team to drop this into the chat, the principles of environmental justice, which help to guide our work. That first principle speaks to the sacredness of Mother Earth, and I've heard that through so many of our presenters tonight of how we should be focused as one of our grounding principles, if you will. So with that being said, I also want to shout out Kevin, who's in the chat also, who's been dropping amazing information as well. So Kevin, just want to say thank you for that. And now we're going to go to our brother Warren Dixon. I'm going to pass the mic to you. You're actually on mute, brother Dixon.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is Warren Dixon. I'm a member at St. Peter AME Church, where I served on the steward board. Small congregation. Reverend Woodbury pastored our church a few years ago. Very nice fellow. I met Brother Clyburn, and I love the way he said equity, because a lot of us, when you divide something equally, some person, in my words, needed more than the other person. And that's what equity means. You know, because some of us at the bottom, some of these larger farmers can benefit from these programs a whole lot better than a minority of person of color. But we have been fortunate enough to participate in soil conservation and FHA doing their programs. We got several programs. They did roads and corrosion problems for us. And we even got a program called the 319 grant. That's something that go around for lower income families and help them with the water system and separate tank system. It's a 60-80 cost sharing program. And some people, if you lower income, some people have qualified for the whole thing. But most everybody is 60. Soil conservation pays 60, and you pay the other 40%. And that program works up good. Now, it don't work on new homes, it work on existing homes, because in our area, we have a lot of problem with separate tanks on that beach and clay land. We got so many different soils. But getting back to farming, I've been farming a good while, and I enjoy farming. I'm about the only one of color in my area that farms. We farm tobacco, soybeans, corn, and sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes is one of our big crops. And like Reverend Woodbury said, we do a lot of gleaning. Gleaning, you do let people come in after we dig the crop and pick up potatoes. And then we have sells a lot of potatoes to roadside stands. We have a lot of customers come in. And like I always taught my children, and my dad always taught me, press down and full up, let it run over. That's in the Bible. And he said, the customer is always right. And he said, help the widow. He said, Warren, help the widows and the misfortune people. And I do it to today. And I believe that's one reason I get so many blessings. And like I said, I've been fortunate. I have got grants, and I've cost shared. We're using the cost share now. We got systems, guidance systems they put on our tractors, and they cost what? We got the cover crop, plants cover crop, and we get a cost sharing on it. We takes advantage of all these programs. And like I said, I serves on the board of soil conservation, and I goes out and tell other farmers, about these programs, because in 2013, I made Commissioner of the Year. And so I'm just one fortunate. I've been fortunate, and thank the good Lord for what he have did for me. And I'd like to, if anybody want to ask me some questions, I'll try to answer them. I'm not a very good speaker.
Well, I think you did just fine. So as Mr. Dixon said, if you have any questions or comments, please drop those in the chat, and we will try and swing back around and answer any of those questions before we close. And I know we're running a little bit over time, so blame that to my head and not my heart. And so we're now going to move to Reverend Edward Pinkney. from the great state of Michigan, who I've had the opportunity to watch and listen and learn for a number of years. I'm passing the mic to you, Reverend Pickney.
Dr. Ali, and I just want to thank you for this tremendous.
Reverend Pickney, you went muted.
All right, I'm unmuted now. I just want to thank you, Dr. Ali, for this tremendous program and giving me this opportunity. And I want to thank my good friend, Simone Lightfoot. Without her, none of this could be possible. And I got so many stories to tell about her and her action. But what I want to talk about, I don't have a good story to tell today. But what I want to talk about, I'm going to give you my scriptures. Is going to be coming from the book of Mark, the 8th chapter. And it simply says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Those are my scriptures for today. But Benton Harbor, Michigan, many of you don't know where Benton Harbor is. You see, it's about 75 miles from Chicago, 179 miles from Detroit. And the city of Benton Harbor has been having 3 years, at least 3 years, of contaminated lead water and bacteria. Nobody ever talks about the bacteria for over 3 years, and nobody said a mumbling word. And our city government didn't even let the world know that there was a problem here. This would have never been exposed if it had not been for the Benton Harbor Community Water Council, who for years kept telling people that the water was bad, y'all need to do something about it, and nobody would listen. Nobody would say a mumbling word. It all started when people realized that the water was smelling funny, and nobody said nothing. My good friend Emma Kennard, daughter, came all the way from Texas, and she saw the difference in the water in the city of Benton Harbor than in Texas. And she sounded the alarm to me. She told me, and when she told me, the Benton Harbor Community Water Council went to work. We wanted to make sure that the residents of Benton Harbor have safe drinking water, which is crucial. Water is life. Without good, clean, safe water, you cannot survive. And that's what I was trying to tell the people, that it's important that we stand up together. See, I believe in unity. I believe in bringing people together. I believe in doing things that would help, not just Reverend Pickney, but help the whole community. See, we're a community that consists of less than 10,000 people, but 90% are people of color. And most of the time, nobody really cares when a community is of color. Nobody really cares. Nobody sounds a lot. For 3 whole years, nobody mentioned that the water in Benton Harbor was contaminated, even worse than Flint, Michigan. And nobody said a mumbling word. And the Benton Harbor Community Water Council, we filed a petition with the EPA. If we had not filed that petition with the EPA, there would be no action, none. But fortunately, that we got things moving by filing that petition, which is huge when you sit down and think about it, because it gives you the idea that now there's folks of color know what to do when there's a problem. We put together a team of organizations, and everybody stood behind us and helped us push this agenda to where it is today. And I tell you, we're out right now doing things, home delivery. My team, the Benton Harbor Community Water Fund, go door to door and make sure that the residents of Benton Harbor have clean, safe water. We do it in the wintertime. It doesn't make a difference to us. We did it today. We're going to do it tomorrow. And we're going to continue doing it to every single person in Benton Harbor, at least, if nothing else, have bottled water. And let me say this. My good friend Simone Lightfoot came to Benton Harbor. As we were passing out water, she took off her hand, her gloves and everything, and got out there and helped us pass out water. You see, this is how we win. We can win if we all come together and unify. There's nothing more important in having unity. There's strength in numbers. And I'm going to leave you with this. Representative Clyburn, we need your help. We need you to come to the city of Benton Harbor and help the residents of Benton Harbor. I'm hoping that you're still listening because we need your help. This is not going to get done unless the infrastructure bill is beautiful, but the people of color normally don't get that money, don't get enough of that money, just get a tidbit of that money. But we need you to come to the city of Benton Harbor and see the conditions here and help us. We need your help. Ali, we need you to come. Come to the city of Benton Harbor. Help us. Help us. Help us. Now close with that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, Reverend Pigney. I remember all the way back in the days when you were working to protect the dunes.
Yeah.
So I remember, and I will be there, and I'll try and push the congressman to come too. So
thank you.
We'll make that happen. Last but not least, we're now going to move to our brother Otis Wright. Otis, I'm going to turn the mic over to you, but just before I do that, I want to let Brother Dixon know that there are a couple of questions in the chat where folks are asking you questions. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that those were in there if you decide to respond back to them. With that being said, Brother Wright, passing the mic to you.
All right. How's everybody doing? I just want to say that I'm definitely enjoying everything that I'm hearing. It's so good to see so many faith leaders. It's also good to see so many people who have the same passion for God and for people. And that's kind of my whole thing. It was good to see that Mr. Dixon works for the soil conservation in his state. And I'm also employed as a contractor by Hinds County Soil Water Conservation as a field tech. So I work alongside USDA NRCS agents here in Jackson, Mississippi. But yeah, let me start off. Like I said, I always have to acknowledge God first. And I just really am excited about the things that he is leading us in. This is a ministry within itself, being able to farm and help people. And so, yeah, let me just keep going. Let me go on. So down here in Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm pretty sure everywhere else, we're fighting a civil war. This civil war is not of right now. It's not cannonballs and guns, but it's food. We are seeing in the majority of the African American areas, we're seeing a bad food dump. We're seeing food dumps, and a food dump or a food swamp is simply areas that they just come in and put fast food places side by side. And then they sit back and they wonder why the African American areas are suffering with diabetes, heart issues, and all these things because the type of food that we have access to. And so we have been establishing urban farms all through Jackson, Mississippi. I think Jackson, Mississippi has maybe about 22 urban farms now that is actually in the city. And so people are finally understanding that this is a fight that we're going to have to fight for ourselves. And this is also a fight that's kind of psychological too, because we have to change our people's mindset and get them to understand that, yeah, this is a civil war. And you need to combat this war by feeding you and your children, but also making sure that you can help feed your neighbors too. And so let me do a little background about me. I come from a rural area. I'm originally from Louisiana, and I'm here just right across the river now, and in the state of Mississippi. And I'm a 5th generation soybean farmer, so I know the ups and downs of farming. I've seen the good and I've seen the bad. And but I worked as an advocate all through the state of Mississippi, Alabama, and my home state of Louisiana. And I'm seeing that rural areas are suffering from the same thing that urban areas are. And that goes back to access to healthy food. And so I've been dedicating myself to decrease these health disparities. And also, it also made me kind of look at my own health too. So it's like, I can't speak about health, speak about eating good if I don't speak about health and eating good. So I've been on my own journey, getting back healthy as well. But yeah, our people here are there's a lot of good things going on. People are finally kind of waking up, and we are here to just advocate that, and make sure that we study kind of push them along with that. We also are looking at different policies. We're looking at trying to get people organized to understand and say, hey, you know, you don't need another churches in your neighborhood. You don't need another Popeyes in your neighborhood. I understand that these places bring jobs, and I know we're all about job creation and all this, but we can give you a job if you don't mind some old-fashioned elbow grease and bending. We can give you a job farming and creating your own food, well, growing your own food, and everybody around you can benefit from this. And so the hard part, like I said, is just getting young men to understand that we can go back and we can be the people who we are. Black people are, we come from hunters, we come from farmers, we come from gatherers. And so, but it's hard to get a lot of African-American men, I'm seeing that challenge, to get out there and try to farm. Most of us who farming are guys who came up in that type of, you know, in environment. But there are some tides, the tides are changing. But our females here in Mississippi have taken over the farming industry. I mean, they are booming, they are organized, way more organized than most men, most male farmers. And I think that's a great thing. So they have been leading the forefront down here. And I'm very proud to say that. It's great to see that. And so with saying all that, I just want to encourage you all that I know sometimes you can get kind of weary in this fight, physically, emotionally. There's always some type of barrier there. But you have to find that passion for people and serving God's people. And that's where I pull my energy from. That's where I pull my last why out of, okay, you know, try to push everybody along. Okay, guys, we got to get this done because it's so much bigger than just us. And so, so we're saying all that. I don't know exactly what else I need. I'm kind of used to having questions ran to me, and I don't want to get here and kind of ramble. So I'm gonna cut it off there. That I am available to you all. I did put my information into the chat. My name is Otis Wright. And I'm here to help. I'm here to help consult or anything else that you guys may need in this fight to just push us to the next level. And God bless you. And I really am honored and I appreciate being part of this panel. And so thank you so much.
Thank you, Brother Wright. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the work that you continue to do as well. I want to thank everyone for sticking with us for a little longer. We went over a little bit long. We're almost there. So I just want to say thank you. I just want to remind folks also a couple of things. One, we want to make sure that any policy suggestions, other types of things that maybe you didn't get a chance to raise tonight, you have the opportunity to drop them in the chat. You can also email them to the team. And Gabby Rivera, our environmental justice coordinator, is about to come forward. She's going to walk us through and close us out. But I would be remiss if I also didn't say that, you know, we see these different types of resources, the resources that were in the stimulus bill, the resources that are a part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And then we heard the congressman also talk about, however, these chunks or pieces of the Build Back Better. All of that requires, and I know everybody on this line is already doing this, is staying engaged in the civic process and making sure that we continue to work to get the right people in offices. Never tell anybody who to vote for, but we need to make sure we have folks who actually care about our communities who are going to stand up and do the right thing. And that means that we have to continue to organize and have to continue to stay connected to the fight. So with that being said, I'm going to pull Gabby forward now. And she's going to close us out and also share with us some next steps. So Gabby Rivera, our environmental justice coordinator, I'm passing the mic to you.
Thank you, Mustafa. Mari kompuche pupeni pulamien. Hello, relatives, brothers and sisters in the Indigenous Mapuche language, Mapudungun. Our ancestral lands are occupied by the nation states of Chile and Argentina. I'm jumping on the call today to let everyone know that today's special session has been recorded and we're going to be sharing with registrants next week. In addition to sharing the recording, we're also going to be sharing the resources that were gathered and collected today. We also have a CECC listserv, and it's an optimal platform to share opportunities, updates, and receive information on resources that can help build capacity and power between our communities. If you want to be included onto the CECC listserv, please add your email and name into the chat, or you can also email me personally. I just put my email into the chat just now. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining our discussion today with farmers and faith leaders, and for talking about the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, the Build Back Better framework, and other relevant resources and opportunities. Thank you so much again, and I wanted to say good night.